Long before pharaohs ruled and pyramids pierced the sky, there was only one true king in Egypt, the Nile. To the ancient Egyptians, it wasn't just a river, it was a god, a lifeline, and a protector. In this episode, journey back to a time when the rise of Egypt depended not on armies or gold, but on the sacred waters that gave birth to a civilization. In this video, you'll uncover how the mighty Nile shaped the destiny of ancient Egypt, from feeding its people and inspiring its gods, to defending its borders and fueling its rise into one of the greatest civilizations in history. By the end, you'll see why the Egyptians didn't just live by the Nile, they worshipped it. From the parched sands of North Africa rose one of the greatest civilizations the world has ever known, a civilization of monumental architecture, celestial wisdom, and enduring legacy. But the story of ancient Egypt does not begin with kings or gods. It begins with a river. Stretching over 4,100 miles from the heart of Central Africa to the Mediterranean Sea, the Nile is not merely the longest river on earth, it is the very lifeline of Egypt. The Greeks called it the gift of the Nile, but to the ancient Egyptians, it was far more than a gift. It was a god, a calendar, a provider, and a protector. It was life. Before 5000 BCE, the land of Egypt was mostly desert, dry, scorching, and inhospitable. Rainfall was rare, and the land offered little hope for permanent human settlement. But the Nile changed everything. Each summer, the river would swell with the melting snow and monsoon rains from the Ethiopian highlands. The waters would flood the valley, spilling over the banks and depositing rich, dark silt along the land, a natural fertilizer that transformed the barren earth into fertile soil. This miraculous phenomenon, called Hapi, or the season of inundation, was predictable, dependable, and central to Egyptian life. No other river in the ancient world offered such a reliable cycle. It allowed early communities to grow food in abundance, to store grain for the dry months, and to support increasingly large populations. Where there was once only sand and scrub, now grew wheat, barley, flax, and fruit trees. As villages flourished along the Nile's banks, so too did the need for coordination, of irrigation, labor, and defense. Small communities turned into larger chiefdoms. By around 3500 BCE, these chiefdoms had begun to coalesce into two major regions, Upper Egypt in the south, and Lower Egypt in the north, where the river spreads into a vast delta before reaching the sea. For centuries, these two regions developed in parallel, occasionally trading, occasionally fighting. But around 3100 BCE, a legendary king, Narmer, also known as Menes, unified the two lands. He wore the white crown of Upper Egypt and the red crown of Lower Egypt, symbolizing his dominion over both. The unification marked the beginning of the first dynasty, and with it, the dawn of pharaonic Egypt. But this political achievement would not have been possible without the Nile. The river was not just a geographical feature, it was the connective tissue of the kingdom. Unlike other early civilizations, which developed around cities separated by hundreds of miles of wilderness, Egypt was a linear civilization. Its people, towns, and temples stretched like a ribbon along the river. The Nile served as a superhighway, enabling fast travel and efficient communication between distant regions. Boats could move downstream with the current, and upstream with the wind, thanks to the prevailing north winds that blew opposite the flow of the river. This unique dynamic turned Egypt into one of the most cohesive and centralized states in the ancient world. From Nubia in the south to the shores of the Mediterranean in the north, the Nile united Egypt into a single cultural and political entity. And yet, to the Egyptians, the river was more than a tool, it was divine. They worshipped it as the god Hapi, the deity of fertility and abundance. Hapi was often depicted as a well-fed man with breasts, symbolizing nourishment, and carrying offerings of food and water. In every village and every temple, offerings were made to Hapi, asking for a gentle, timely, and generous flood. Too little water meant famine. Too much brought destruction. The Nile's flooding also marked time. The Egyptian calendar was based on its cycle. Each year was divided into 3 seasons: Ake, the flood, Perate, the planting, and Shimu, the harvest. The appearance of the star Sirius in the morning sky signaled the coming of the flood and the beginning of the new year. This astronomical alignment was so consistent that the Egyptians created one of the world's first solar calendars, accurate to within a few hours of the modern Gregorian calendar. Temples and monuments throughout Egypt were aligned not only with the sun and stars, but with the river itself. Cities like Thebes, Memphis, and Heliopolis grew up along the banks, drawing life and trade from its waters. Tombs, including the grand necropolises at Giza and the Valley of the Kings, were built on the western side of the river, where the sun set each evening, symbolizing death and the journey into the afterlife. In contrast, the eastern bank, where the sun rose, was associated with life, rebirth, and daily activity. Indeed, even death was a journey upon the Nile. Pharaohs and nobles were ferried across its waters in grand funerary boats, mimicking the mythical journey of the sun god Ra, who sailed through the underworld each night before being reborn at dawn. And while the Nile gave life, it also shaped Egypt's economy. Beyond agriculture, it enabled trade with distant lands. From the south came Nubian gold, incense, ivory, and exotic animals. From the east came cedar wood from Lebanon, copper from Sinai, and lapis lazuli from Afghanistan. These goods traveled up and down the Nile, carried by merchant fleets that turned Egypt into a hub of commerce. Yet the river was not always kind. Historical records speak of years when the flood failed, when the waters were too low, and the crops withered. During the first intermediate period, circa 2181 to 2055 BCE, the Nile's poor inundation was one of the key contributors to the collapse of centralized authority. Hunger, rebellion, and political fragmentation followed. It was a sobering reminder that Egypt's prosperity was always tied to the river's mercy. The ancient Egyptians, always seeking balance in their lives and beliefs, saw this delicate dependency as part of the cosmic order, Ma'at. Ma'at was the principle of harmony, truth, and justice that governed the universe. When the Nile flooded properly, Ma'at prevailed. When chaos, or Isfet, took hold, through drought, rebellion, or war, it was a sign that balance had been disturbed. To restore Ma'at, the pharaoh, considered the earthly representative of the gods, was expected to act as a guardian of the land and the river. Rituals, offerings, and construction projects were undertaken not just for political power, but to honor the Nile and ensure the continuation of divine order. Even in their myths, the Nile loomed large. It was said to spring from the tears of the goddess Isis, mourning her slain husband Osiris. In other legends, it was the milk of Hathor or the breath of Ra. Its origins were mysterious, its power undeniable. Modern scientists have confirmed what the ancients understood instinctively, that Egypt's civilization was the direct result of the Nile's unique geography and hydrology. Satellite imagery shows how the ancient settlements were tightly clustered along the green ribbon of the river valley, surrounded on all sides by uninhabitable desert. The Nile didn't just give life, it defined life. Without it, there would be no Egypt. If you found this journey fascinating, make sure to like, subscribe, and explore more forgotten empires with us.